Welcome to Your Hometown Solutions. I'm your host, Jean Newell with Waterview Realty, and we meet our experts here in the studio, and we talk about all kinds of things that concern you, your family, your finance, your home, your garage, your garden, just about anything you can think of. We'll talk about it here, and we're very pleased to have one of our experts in the studios, who is Coleen Quick. But before she comes on the mic, it's National Women's Month, and we thought that was kind of appropriate because I'm constantly asked, how far have we come in the business world? Because I can remember many years ago when I first got into real estate, when we wanted to, when we were working with a couple and we needed to use both their incomes to qualify them for a loan, if the woman was within quote-unquote childbearing years, we could not use her income. So that was only a few decades ago, and women could not get credit cards in their own name. It was pretty hard. You couldn't really buy a house in your own name. It was not impossible, but it was always your husband had to sign or your father had to sign for your credit cards. So keeping that in mind, we're asking the question, are women still earning less than men? What are the financial challenges facing today's woman? In the studio with me today is Coleen Quick, a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and we're going to put the spotlight on these and other concerns for today's woman. So thank you, Coleen Quick, for coming out to the studios today, and we're going to just pull back the curtain and we're just going to tell it like it is. Thank you, Coleen. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Coleen, tell us a little bit about you, your credentials, and so forth. What actually makes a financial planner? Do you have to go to special school? Do you have to get a special license? Exactly what is your background?
My background is that I attended Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and I studied international business and Spanish. As far as becoming a financial advisor, there's not a particular major that you must choose. However, the finance classes did help when I was studying for the Series 7, the Series 6, and also the Florida 215 Health and Life. So not necessary to have a certain major, however, was definitely beneficial while studying.
So those
for
were licensed.
Exams.
Those are specific
Yes.
license. What were they again, and what
The
do they
Series
cover?
7 and then the Series 66. Those cover a variety of things between investments, the different laws and regulations, and then the Florida 215 that covers insurance, annuities, all of it.
That, right?
All
right.
of it. Mm-hmm.
And so many times people get all their information from one of the gurus on TV, and it's hard to give out financial information in a quick little question on air on a TV show because you want to really look at the whole picture. And
Absolutely.
you need to get into people's personal financial goals and what they're accomplishing now, what they plan to, what their future looks like. And that takes a nice confidential appointment. So how did you decide to go with Edward Jones? Because that's a big name in the financial industry.
It is. I actually grew up around it. My dad is a financial advisor in Taylorville, Illinois. I'm sure you've never heard of the town.
No, but where is that in Illinois?
It is about 45 minutes outside of Springfield, and
Okay.
it's a small farming, rural community. Mm-hmm. There wasn't cell phone reception until about 3 years ago.
Oh my.
And he built his business essentially on farmers and business owners and the local people in that town. And so I watched him, not whenever he started 40 years ago, but just over the years, build relationships with his clients, with the community, and it was really attracted to me and able to see how he not only built into what was originally the parents, but then their kids and then their grandkids. And being a farming town, every Monday morning he has fresh eggs delivered to his office and different produce. So just seeing the relationships that he's been able to establish. So that was the original draw. And then so I have some other family members. My fiance actually does the same thing as well.
Wow.
So
Well, we know you know how to balance your checkbook for sure. But before we get in, grab a pencil and paper and jot down some of these notes, because I know you're going to want to get a hold of Coleen. Where are you located in Melbourne area?
I am located on 5410 Murrell Road.
Okay. Isn't that going to be your new office?
Yes, that is my new office. I'm actually moving in tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, that and how about a website or a email?
My email is Coleen, spelled COLLEEN .quick @edwardjones.com. And then you can find out more information at www.edwardjones.com.
So if you can't call Coleen, call her quick. No, call.
My name's changing soon. I'm getting married, so.
Oh, goodness. Let's go ahead and let's get into that women's issue. What are the financial challenges that are facing women today?
Well, for one, women are living longer than men. A 65-year-old woman is expected to live on average another 20.5 years compared to men only living close to 18 years. And that's once they're age 65. And so that's another 2.5 years that women are living longer than men.
And a lot of women don't realize that when their husband passes away, there goes that Social Security check too. That they can apply for their widows, but it never is the same as having two Social Security checks coming in. So that's a problem, isn't it?
Right, and it always depends on each individual with what their Social Security was prior. Mm-hmm. So everyone
is different. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's another reason why you have to sit down and confidentially look at the whole picture. So what are some of the things that you're seeing with the women coming into your office? What are their biggest concerns besides living longer than their husbands?
A lot of women are concerned about just not knowing the type of investments that they're invested in, and also just being unaware. A lot of times I hear women say, my husband takes care of everything.
Oh, yes.
It's fine. He knows it all. It's like, well, what would happen if
Yes.
something happens to him? It's so important that, not that they need to know every little detail down to the last penny and dime, but it's so important to know where your finances are going and why.
Exactly. And I think a lot of people don't really know what all these different things mean. Let's go into just a little definition on stocks, mutual funds, IRAs, Roth IRAs, futures, a versatile portfolio. Boy, we can't say all that in about 30 seconds, but the difference between a stock, a mutual fund, and especially the IRAs, people get that confused, the Roth IRAs and the other. I mean, I know just about enough to fill a shot glass. And sometimes you feel like having that shot glass after you full when you go over these. But these are the things we need to know. We really need to educate ourselves, because especially about 10 years ago when everything went haywire and all the monies, I mean, I lost a lot of money, and various other people that I know did as well, because, and I don't know if there was anything we could have done about it, but the fact that we were maybe not diversified enough or didn't understand what was happening, we just sat and watched our financial portfolio decrease every month. So kind of give us a little overview of what's the difference between a stock and a bond and a IRA and so forth.
Well, to start, a bond is also known as fixed income security, and it's a debt instrument created for the purpose of raising capital. Owning bonds helps to diversify a portfolio, as the bond market doesn't rise or fall along the stock market. So essentially, it's less risky than a stock.
So is that when people say you can buy a bond, a city bond, when the cities also
so essentially,
sell bonds?
We like to think of an own versus a loan. And with a bond, so say this Brevard County School District, they issue a bond.
Okay.
And you go to purchase that bond, and they say, Jean, I need $1,000. I'll give you your $1,000 back, and then I'll also pay you interest on it. Let's say in 5 years, I'll give you 2%, and then once the 5 years is over with, I'll give you your principal, the $1,000, And then along the way, depending if it's a bond that pays semi-annually or monthly, there's different types, they're paying you interest as well. But you are the one that's in control because you're loaning your money to the institution.
So you actually have a certificate. So years ago, that was popular, the U.S. savings bonds or the war bonds, and people would buy them at, say, $20, and then they matured 10 or 15 years later for $25 or something like that. So that they still work the same way with the bonds today.
Essentially, you're giving them money, you're loaning them money. And the stock, so the loaning side is the bond, and then the stock is the owning portion.
Okay.
And that's also known as an equity. And corporations raise capital by issuing stocks and entitling the stockholders, or also known as shareholders, to partial ownership of the corporation.
So this is where it gets confusing to me. I hear this all the time because a lot of people that work for the high-tech companies and so forth, they collect a lot of their income through stocks or instead of just straight income. And then their stock splits. And then all of a sudden they're rich beyond belief. I've never quite understood that. So they have 100 shares of stock, and what happens when a stock splits, or how does that maneuver into the splitting? What has to happen with the business where the stock splits?
Well, essentially what's important to realize with the price of stock, anytime you're doing research on a particular company, is to do background to make sure that it's fairly valued. Because essentially the price of it is a number it's given, and there's a lot of formulas and calculations that go into defining what a particular stock should be trading at. And so what's important to realize is if it's at a fair price or if it's undervalued. There are still companies today that are undervalued. There's companies that are overvalued. And stock splits a lot of times happen to prevent the price from rising and rising and rising. Also, that will happen when there's a company that's either going to be merging or potentially there's a spinoff. There's a lot of different reasons. But what's important to just take home, I guess, is making sure that the stock price is fairly valued.
So that's some of the things that you would help people with, because you can research that and you'll be able to tell them exactly what they're looking at. It's not just buying something. You have to know what you're buying, what you're getting into, because there's some things that are perfect for one family or one person,
right? But
it would be something maybe an older person wouldn't be interested in it because maybe it's a quick growth or something that's not in their portfolio. We need to probably talk about that as well. So what do you think I know we talked a little bit about the statistics, but the statistics, I almost spit that out. The women's pay versus men, are we still at about 78% on the dollar? Do you know those facts? I know we're still undervalued.
It's according to the Census Bureau data, women working full time in the United States are typically paid 80% of what men earn.
So we've gone up a little bit, but still it's so bad. So now we talked a little bit about bonds. Now the stocks, when they see the stock market report and they give the average what's going on, and that's a Dow Jones average. They just pick 50 stocks to look at as far as their percentages, and that's how they get the figures for that day.
The S&P 500 is the one that's most commonly looked at, and it represents the 500 companies that they're using in different categories to see how the market is doing. Mm-hmm. And there are different sectors. We have energy, industrials, technology. We have consumer discretionaries, materials, healthcare, communications, consumer staples, and utilities. And what we typically do is whenever we first meet someone, we go over what their risk tolerance is, because that is one of the most crucial things.
Explain what risk tolerance is. That means they don't want to be white knuckling every day at the table with, oh my gosh, it's gone up, it's gone down.
Right. Because, people, I like my 8 hours of sleep each night and being able to sleep comfortably. And so we never want people to be in something that they're not comfortable with, and that they know the risk ahead of time. Mm-hmm. As we mentioned earlier, no one can predict what's going to happen with the market and when, but at least knowing